Well, being tough on crime is controversial around the world, but few have been as brazen about it as Philippines' former president, Rodrigo Duterte. Once called the Punisher, he bragged about killing suspected drug dealers. By the Philippines' own estimates, some 6,000 people were murdered in Duterte's war on drugs. Human rights organizations actually believe it was tens of thousands. But Duterte's supporters, and there are many, say he did what was needed to reduce shocking crime rates in Philippine cities. And they say the only reason he's facing trial now is because he fell out with his former ally and current president, Bongbong Marcos. Here's a look.
Once the face of an entire nation, former Filipino President Rodrigo Duterte is on his way to the International Criminal Court on charges of crimes against humanity.
This will be a long legal proceedings. But I say to you, I will continue to serve my country.
Rodrigo Duterte, now almost 80, was the president of the Philippines from 2016 until 2022. After a brief trip to Hong Kong recently, he was arrested upon his return to Manila.
Hours before his arrival, Interpol Manila received an official copy of the ICC warrant.
Rodrigo Duterte rose to office first as the hardline mayor of Davao City, thrilling his supporters with tough anti-crime, anti-corruption, and anti-drug promises. But he horrified his critics with frequent appeals to fight violence with violence and messages suggesting police should shoot suspected criminals on the spot.
If you know of any addicts, go ahead and kill them yourself, as getting their parents to do it would be too painful. If you commit corruption, whoever you are, I will have you flown by helicopter to Manila and I will toss you out. I have done it before. Why would I not do it again?
Official figures put the number of alleged criminals killed in his crackdown at 6,000. But unofficial estimates put that number closer to 30,000. For many Filipinos, it felt like police were given free rein to carry out summary executions and dish out death sentences without trial. An indiscriminate war against the urban poor and the vulnerable. Since his arrest, the friends and families who lost loved ones during Duterte's rule have united, a bittersweet moment of hope for justice.
I just kept on crying because of happiness that I couldn't contain. This somehow gives justice to my child.
But Duterte remains hugely popular among vast swathes of Filipinos.
He's really kind. He gave us hope. Now that hope is lost.
A source in the current Philippines government, who didn't want to be identified, told newsmakers that many supporters felt the arrest violated the Filipino constitution by not allowing Duterte a chance to protest or appeal his extradition to The Hague. And many still view his presidency as one that successfully fought against communist terrorists, reduced crime, and tackled oligarchs in the country. There are those who argue that acting so quickly on the arrest warrant was a convenient way for the current president, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., to fend off political challenges ahead of the May election. And that includes his own vice president, Sara Duterte, who is Rodrigo Duterte's own daughter, currently facing pending impeachment proceedings, but who is planning a run for the presidency herself. So is the upcoming ICC trial justice for a tyrant who encouraged extreme violence? Or is it a cynical political maneuver from the current president to help his own re-election chances? Or can both statements be true?
So what now for the social and political fallout in the Philippines, as well as the fate of Rodrigo Duterte at the ICC? Joining me now to debate that and more are from Manila, politician, lawyer, and human rights defender Leila de Lima. Also from Manila, former Philippine Senator Antonio Trillanes, and from Hastings in the UK, journalist Veronica Pedrosa. Thanks all so much for being with me. Leila de Lima, I'll start with you, because many would say this is actually quite personal for you because you spent years in prison under Duterte on what many, including the EU, actually said were trumped-up drug charges. So what then do you make of his supporters who say this is all purely politically motivated and that he actually fought a much needed battle against crime in the Philippines to protect ordinary Filipinos?
I absolutely disagree. I mean, it's actually a diversionary message that they're trying to impart from the sins of Mr. Duterte. We all know what happened. In his 6 years as president of our country, thousands were killed, mercilessly killed, without undergoing through any process. Just mere suspicion that they are involved in illegal drug trade. Now he was, flouting. He was really, he didn't care. He didn't care about human lives. He didn't care about due process. He didn't care about human rights. So what is this? To us, it was a historic day the other day, March 11, that finally, the one that we've been waiting for, which is the issuance of the warrant of arrest by the ICC, came. It's the start now of justice for the victims, the families of the victims. So we are not, all these things that his supporters are saying, that his rights were violated, his human rights are violated, that he was not, or he's not being given due process. There's a lot of a baloney.
I know you've pointed out the irony, I know, in that he is getting full due process through the ICC, something that the suspects, go ahead.
Yes, it's something that they never accorded any of those that they killed. So I said thousands of them, even some of them were innocents. Some of them were children or teenagers. And now they're crying violation of their rights. Where are those rights? Where is due process when they were doing that? When they were doing the carnage of our people? And what is so revolting about it or detestable about it is that they targeted mostly poor suspected drug offenders. They never actually targeted big time drug lords.
I mean, let me come to Veronica, because the argument is so clear. And people should care that innocent people may have died and that nobody faced due process for being suspected of drug dealing. But the truth is his supporters are his supporters. And we actually spoke to a source within the Filipino government who said this, I'm quoting, "Politically, President Duterte has the advantage right now because he further won the hearts of Filipinos and elections are coming in May. His political party is getting stronger because of this." Is that to say his arrest could actually backfire on President Marcos because Filipinos care more about what he did to fight crime than potentially those who suffered for it?
Absolutely not. And I would actually like to raise the questions of asking why this is happening now and who it benefits. I see the developments of the last few days within the context of the nature of Philippine politics and society. While I am no fan of Duterte and the murderous regime that he presided over, and I lobbied through a human rights organization called the ASEAN Parliamentarians of Human Rights for the release of Senator Leila de Lima, who was unfairly incarcerated, and the only parliamentarian who was incarcerated in the whole of the region, apart from those who were incarcerated subsequently in the Myanmar coup. It was a shame upon the Philippines during that time. But I also look at it from the context of having been an exile from the Marcos regime as well. This, for me, is about the feud of dynasties. You know, there's political science books, a very famous political science book that's called The Anarchy of Families. And this is what I see at play. That is not to say that this is not a fabulous outcome for accountability for criminals in the world. But it is also, for me, an indication that the ICC, the International Criminal Court, is only as strong as the politics behind any given case.
Interesting. So it almost sounds like the right thing happening, even if for, nefarious reasons, for political reasons. So let me ask Antonio, I guess from the Filipino government's perspective, according to what Veronica was saying, or at least I should say from the pro-Marcos faction of the government's position, would justice for victims via the ICC be almost an unintended consequence because they were solely looking to bring down someone who has now become a political enemy?
I think those things are incidental. To be fair to the investigators of the ICC, they've been working on this since 2017 when we first filed the communication with the ICC. So it is just incidental that all of these things came into fruition at the time that the Marcos and Duterte camps have split up. Of course, that provided the opportunity for this arrest to happen. But at the end of the day, is this the right thing to do? Or does Mr. Duterte deserve it? Yes, as mentioned by Senator De Lima, they killed thousands of people. Duterte made it a policy to kill suspected drug addicts and drug pushers, and that would make all of them innocent, actually, because everybody is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. Now, what we found out later on, especially during the congressional hearings last year, that it was Duterte himself who was actually in partnership with a drug lord, Mr. Michael Young, and he was using the war on drugs as a ruse to actually kill the competition and to create this environment of fear. That that was was effective in the sense that the different sectors were so afraid to make him accountable for anything.
I have to ask Veronica why you seem to disagree so much with that analysis, just by reading your facial expressions.
I mean, it's a matter of opinion, of course. Senator Trillanes is coming at this from a completely different view, but I find it ironic that somebody who tries to grab power in attempted coups, Senator Trillanes, is now speaking in favor of the rule of law. I would like him to this is something that I just find kind of hilarious.
Go ahead, Senator.
Okay. Well, I have paid my dues. When I stood up against a wannabe dictator also in Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, who cheated during the 2004 elections, which sadly and unfortunately is Ms. Carmen Pedrosa here is a fan of former President Gloria Arroyo, and that's why
I am
she
not
speaks
my
like
mother,
that. I'm sorry, but
and I am no fan of the former President Duterte, and I did not try to attempt to have a coup in the peninsula.
You're a fan of Gloria Macapagal Arroyo.
No, I'm not.
Okay, let's. Actually, it sounds like we're going to have another program off the back of this debate, but let's stick to.
No, but I think it's important, Andrea, for you to understand that there is this political complexity. He's talking about another dynasty, and you're talking. This is all about feuds between families, and that's what bothers me. None of it strengthens the justice system in the Philippines or the state. This oligarchical system in the Philippines has weakened the state.
So let me ask Leila de Lima, I mean, does it come down almost to, again, I know you approve absolutely of what the ICC is trying to do on, in your opinion, correct legal footing. However, there is such a credibility issue, if I can put it that way, with all the players involved politically in the Philippines, and in this case, that it doesn't serve the ends of justice that you really do want it to serve, to have him on trial at the ICC.
Let me speak from the perspective of one who is in fact also a victim of the war on drugs. Yeah. I was not killed, but I was severely persecuted. The persecution against me was, in fact, unprecedented in modern Philippine history. So my perspective always is about justice. Now, yes, there are political complexities. Yes, because initially these are allies, the Marcos camp and the Duterte camp. But then what was important now for the victims, the families of the victims, is that whatever is the motivation of the current administration, they saw that because ICC came in and they saw the validity or legality of the actions of the ICC, then we had that situation the other day. Historic, unprecedented, a milestone event. Yes, there are political factors. Yes, there are political complexities. But if I have to say, in my, as I said, from the perspective of a victim of Mr. Duterte, because it was clearly a case of political and personal vendetta against him, because I was already running after him as early as in 2009, when I was the chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights, when all of these killings attributed to the Davao Death Squad under the leadership of then Mayor Rodrigo Duterte were happening. And then came 2016, he became the president, I became a senator, and he was doing the same things. Now there is this, and then in 2022, a new administration came in, although the Marcoses and the Dutertes.
Okay.
But yes, in terms of injury to the Philippine society, both camps, of course, have their respective liabilities. But what is crucial now is, and that is an important fact to point out, is because of the decision of the Marcos administration to defer to the jurisdiction of the ICC, and that is why it happened. It happened.
Understand that you are defending the legality of what the ICC is doing, but in the Philippines, in Manila, people are saying now that President Marcos could actually be impeached for cooperating with an international entity if it's actually found in violation of the Constitution. So is there a question of legality that you would concede on both sides as per what's happening at the ICC? Go ahead.
What is clear to me is that notwithstanding the withdrawal of the Philippines as member of the ICC or Rome Statute, the withdrawal that was made by Mr. Duterte himself because he was trying to shield himself from responsibility, from accountability. What is clear to me is, because that is what is stated in the Rome Statute, that is also what was decided upon by a Supreme Court decision, Philippine Supreme Court decision in 2021, a unanimous decision saying that notwithstanding the withdrawal of our country as member of the Rome Statute and of the ICC retains jurisdiction over the crimes that were committed at the time that the Philippines was still a member. So it's clear to me. And we have also a domestic law. We're not just talking about the Rome Statute, an international treaty. A domestic law, Republic Act 9851, the law on acts against international humanitarian law. It's also clear there that the local authorities, the domestic authorities, can defer to the jurisdiction of the ICC and can, in fact, surrender the subject of the investigation and the prosecution to the ICC.
Well,
so that is very clear to me as a lawyer.
We'll see if it goes any further than in Filipino courts, as per the arguments that Duterte's supporters have made. But let me ask, Antonio, Duterte is called, obviously, the Trump of Asia. And we saw in the case of Donald Trump in the United States what millions of people so clearly thought was a horrendous crime committed on January 6th. They called it an insurrection. We saw eventually those people freed to cheers from Trump supporters. And in the end, people felt all the efforts made to keep justice on track, I'll put it that way, all did backfire in favor of a politician they thought would never come back to office. Do you fear this could be the same setup now for Rodrigo Duterte?
Based on the trajectory, yes, I may see a lot of parallelisms between what's happening in the US right now and in here. Specifically, the daughter of Mr. Duterte, Sara Duterte, is the vice president. And that leads to your earlier point. The people are claiming that Mr. Marcos should be impeached are it's self-serving, and they don't represent the majority of the Filipino people. Based on our internal survey, 70% of the Filipinos are either apathetic about the arrest of Mr. Duterte or are in agreement of the arrest. So it's by no means the majority. Now, it may happen also here if only there is no impeachment case against Vice President Sara Duterte. And we feel confident. We also filed that impeachment case along with Senator De Lima against Sara Duterte, which would happen very soon, in July, to be specific. And if she gets convicted, then there is no way that the Dutertes would ever return to power.
Okay. Veronica, we're down to our last few minutes. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, how confident are you, Veronica, that this won't descend into similar chaos that we saw, for example, in the case of the United States, especially with Sara Duterte still very angry about what's happening and her role politically right now?
I wouldn't see the United States as necessarily a model that the Philippines could follow. But what I would like to say is that the story is not over. Across the Philippines, it's like people are reaching out for the popcorn to see what happens next in the family-on-family drama. This is not over. We have elections this year, and then there are presidential elections coming up soon as well, subsequent to that. And to me, that is a very important part of what will inform the way that this story unravels. I mean, I think that the so-called popularity of President Duterte is overblown. I think there was fear and there was a lot of support for the fact that there was somebody doing something about law and order. But I don't think that I cannot give credence to Bongbong Marcos, whose family created this society of impunity historically that allowed Duterte to come in and do whatever he wants. And now they're deciding that it is politically convenient and for them to get rid of another family that is competing with them. And it is possible for that to be the case, as well as for international justice to be brought against the Duterte regime. There will be more arrests, I suspect, as the Marcoses clear the field further.
Veronica, though, I mean, for as much as you see this as the clash between two dynasties here and their political infighting, to put it mildly, is there also an issue there of how much Filipinos are willing to, I guess, undermine democracy itself just to see a qualitative difference in their lives, in the security of their daily lives?
I am afraid that would belie a rather shallow reading of the nature of society in the Philippines. I talked about the anarchy of families before. There are oligarchs who run the field, and the people of the Philippines are disempowered by this system. You talk about people coming along and sort of overthrowing and changing the system. It's not going to happen. Not in our current state of... I hate to be cynical, but I really feel that the grip of these big families across the country that have denied social justice, plain justice, they are entrenched, and there is very little that can change the system. And in fact, this latest episode with the arrest of Duterte and his sending to the ICC is another chapter, is just another development in that chain of events that show the weakness of the people and of the state.
Okay. Veronica, that will have to be the final word, very unfortunately, for this edition of The Newsmakers. I'd like to thank all three of my panelists sincerely